Well, hello everybody. My name is Rafael. I work at Eldorado and I manage the non-dilutive financing department. And today it's a two-for one. Actually, you can see Ali on the presentation, but today it's going to be me and Titouan.
So hello everyone, Titouan, and I'm managing the investor and startup relations on the venture side of Eldorado.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the best practices to get some fundraising in France. So both with the public side and the private side. So first we're going to talk about really quick about Eldorado, what we do and who we are. Then I'm going to present to you all the public funding and the actions of BPI France. Then Titouan is going to have a focus on the fundraising with some equity. And finally, if you have some time, we'll have a small Q&A session. The golden rules of the presentation is do not hesitate to ask your questions. We're on Zoom, so you can send a chat or raise your hand. We'll send the presentation and more content after the session, so you don't need to take as much note as you want.
Okay, so just to start off, who are we? What does Eldorado do? So basically, it was created by 3 serial entrepreneurs with the goal to help other entrepreneurs to find any means of financing. So you can have like advices on the non-dilutive part, like the public funding, or the private funding. We do both. So to explain a little bit more, we have developed a platform where you can create an account, you log in, you fill in your profile, and after that, the investors do the same, and there is a matching algorithm that connects both, so you can spend more time doing your business and less time searching for funds. Basically, it's that simple. So you can see the platforms looks like this. You have like the real advantage of Eldorado is that you have business angel, a lot of them, but you also have VC funds, corporate VCs, private equity firms. So we have all type of investor for all type of projects. Here is the profile. You just have to fill in like the problematic, what does your product do, what is your sector, your strategy. And the platform also allows you to see what public financing you're eligible to. I think it's the right term. We're not here to explain how the platform works. Maybe one interesting thing to mention is that we also have a blog where we post a lot of content. We try to post as often as possible useful content for entrepreneur, like a template for your deck, for your cap table, for your business plan. So don't hesitate to go on our website, check our blog. It can be useful.
All right. Just to start off, before we dive into the financing part, we're gonna give you some. As someone talked, okay. We're gonna give you some advice on the role of the leader. So the first one and one of the key.
You are my lifesaver.
I'm sorry. I think someone is talking on the.
Você بترمتي
One more. I'm gonna mute you. I'm sorry. Oh, thanks. So yeah, sorry. Some quick advice before we dive in the financing part. So the first one, and it's really key to understand this point, it's the art of anticipation. What does that mean is that you can go and see your banker and see some public actors when you're actually running out of money. So you really have to anticipate your financial needs, but also your development strategy. and adapt it to seek financing, not when you most need it, but when you think you're going to need it. The second one is the financial literacy. So we don't ask you to be experts on financial terms, to be like able to do all your balance sheets and stuff, but you need to know what is working capital, how does an equity fundraising works versus a safe fundraising, how to, I don't know, like do some tax exemptions. You have to get to know a little bit more about financial literacy. You can't, especially when you're gonna need to talk with the banker or public actors or investors, you need to know a bit about this stuff. The next one is financing and business strategy. So what we want to say is that both of the terms are really linked. You can't dissociate your financing strategy of your business strategy. What we mean is that, for example, if you want to go international, it's gonna have some costs, and you also will need some financing to launch your operations internationally. The next one, and this presentation will, I hope, help you to get a better understanding of the financing actors. So we'll see that even in the public actors, everybody has heard of BPI, but it's not the only one. And the same way about the private funding, you have to know that there are several actors that won't intervene at the same time and at the same maturity level of your company. Last but not least, the role of the entrepreneur. So you need to be both manager and visionary. What do we mean with that is that you need to know what's your mission, where you want to go, but also you are the one that will take care of the daily operation, the daily issues. And so the role of the entrepreneur is really to have this anticipation and a vision of the company, but also to take care of the daily tasks you have. Then to start talking a bit more about funding, you can see that we split them in 3 families. The 2 with the yellow stars are the one that Eldorado operates, so public and private funding. As I just said, you can see that there are different actors, and there's also the bank field with some classic actors like Société Générale, Crédit Agricole, but also neobank like October, N26, Revolut, Conto, that can also be good financing solutions. I'm gonna let Titouan give you, even if we don't do that at Eldorado, we still have some advices for the financing part with banks.
Yeah, so on the part with banks, so historically banks were not eager to finance startups because they didn't understand very well how they worked, or they didn't had any collateral or security for loans, basically. But the things are starting to move. You can see that several banks, like traditional banks, now have incubators or accelerators, like BNP Paribas, the Village by ICEA. Société Générale also have one. And as they have this incubator and accelerator, they learn more and more how to finance startup. And now you can see more easily a bank financing a startup or giving a loan. Also, another thing that accelerated this trend is COVID, because of in France the PGE. The French state guaranteed some loans, so banks started to lend more and more to startup. And now that they understand how it works, they're more likely to give loans in the future. just a few advices, like a very concrete advices. So you can get a loan. First of all, the treasury level. As Rafael said in the beginning, it's important to have like a short, mid, long-term vision of your cash management and your treasury. You can't go and see your banker when you're running out of cash. So if you have financing needs, you've got to anticipate them, particularly if you want debt. So also another thing that is important in this part is how to calculate for how long you're going to reimburse your loan. Because of course you can reimburse on 20 years, but the problem is you'll have like a small ratio, but loans are going to pile up over time. So the quicker you can reimburse, the best it is. So it's a management you have to do. On the equity levels, it's very important to know what can be considered by your banker as equity level. For example, your turnover for the year before isn't considered as equity. This is very important because on your equity level depends your debt to equity ratio. And the smaller this ratio, the best it is for you, because if this ratio is high, you won't get able to obtain another loan. So another important point. And last point is having a real banker, like a real bank advisor. We see a lot of neobanks with the fintech trend going on with Revolut and 26, but those type of banks don't make loans. So what we recommend is having maybe a neobank for your daily expenses, but as soon as you create your startup, also open up account in a traditional bank with a banker that knows you. Even if you don't use this bank account at first, the banker is going to know you, know your business, how it works. And in the end, when you will need to get a loan, he will be more comprehensive, more confident to lend to you. So, or you can benchmark and find the best banker for your business, or to start, you can just go and see your personal banker and ask him if he has any offer for businesses. It's a good start. So yeah, basically it.
All right. Before we tackle the public funding, does anybody has any question? All right, I'll take that as a no. So,
Sorry,
yeah.
I have a question. So if we don't have any collateral or anything, and especially if we are we came from abroad, so we're not for my example, I'm not French, so how does it work if I apply for a loan with a bank? What's their guarantee, and what happens if maybe the worst case scenario, so if my business fails and I struggle to repay my loan, so what happens there?
Well,
Because it's a risk that we should consider also.
yeah, of course, of course. Actually, it depends, because some of the loans you can get from your bank can actually be guaranteed by the BPI or other public institutions to specifically limit the level of engagement you have towards the loan. So sometimes, yeah, you're gonna have to repay it, but sometimes even if your business crashes, it's not that you don't have to repay it, but a part of it is guaranteed by the BPI.
Okay, and this is the most used case, or it depends on the banks, or it depends on the business, or is it what happens usually? So
Usually, you can ask. It's not you that ask for a guarantee of a BPI. It's directly your banker. But yeah, usually it's not the whole of it, but between 20 to I think 90% of the loan can be guaranteed.
Okay, so I understand that there's a part that the BPI can guarantee, and there's a part that I should repay. Is that so? And what are the percentages for each commission, or I don't know how to.
Yeah. I can't really say like it depends. Like there's not a general answer.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
I also have one question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm launching a fashion brand, and for this type of business, for the success of this kind of business, a heavy investment is required in communications. Especially, we have to work with the communications agency, and a second heavy investment goes in the production. So when I approach my bank for the loans, is it advisable to get the loan for the production of stock or communications?
I think the classic banks will more easily give you the loan for the production part because they'll will have some collateral behind it.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's only marketing and communication, it's going to be harder for them like to have a collateral and to share the risk with you.
Yeah, and maybe for the marketing part, if you have recurring revenues, you can see like revenue-based financing solutions like Silver.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So about the public funding, I don't think that I'm learning anything when I say that BPI is the main point of contact. But you have to know that sometimes BPI is the operator of the financial mechanism, but it's not always the financer. Sometimes it's the local authority, sometimes it's Europe, sometimes it's France as the state. So that is quite important because most of the time, no matter who is behind the financial help, BPI will be your point of contact and operate all the application part. But to detail a bit more on how does exactly BPI France work, you have to know that it's divided in two big parts. The first one is the investment part. So BPI can directly invest in French companies. So for that, they have like two main actions. The first one is to invest in VC funds like Partech, like Kima. So BPI give them money and then those funds have to do their investments. Or they also have their own funds. Some of the funds have like some specific thematic themes, such as the creative industry, such as the smart city, water management. So they are never lead investors on those kind of a deal, but they often help a lot of French companies to get some fundraising. The second part, and the one that we actually gonna be a bit more focused on today, is the financing part, specifically the subsidies and innovation loans. Because when you're a startup and you just created your company, those are the financing mechanism you can more easily have access to. And one thing we can notice is that the amount of subsidies and loans dedicated to innovation are constantly like growing. And just a word about it, but there are a lot of other financing work done at BPI with warranties, with international, with some support. So feel free to reach them for this too. So On this slide, you can see a few of the mechanisms you can apply to. So you have the ADI, Innovap, Bourse French Tech, Prêt Innovation, the Crédit Impôt Recherche, the Direct. So you can see that you have a lot of different public funding options. It's quite a jungle. So what we do at Eldorado is that if you categorize them from the different kind of support, you can already see a bit more clearly on what are they and the difference between them. First one are the subsidies or grants. So those are money actually given to a company to finance a project. Most of the time it's going to be an R&D project, but we're going to see that it's a R&D with a larger spectrum. And then you have the prêt d'honneur. So it's an important point because it can help you to increase your shareholders' equity, which is a very important notion to the BPI. And as your company will get bigger and bigger and more mature, you'll have access to loans, repayable advance, and even some tax and social exemptions. So, but where do you start, and what kind of financing can you have access when you just created your company? One of the easiest and most known mechanism is the Bourse French Tech, BFT, which is a subsidy of 30k euros that you have to ask before your company celebrates its first anniversary. What we want to say in this slide is that there is like a continuum of financing at BPI that will first help you finance the first research step. Then once you have proven and done your first MVP, your first POC, they will help you to develop really the product or the service you want to commercialize with some already expenses. So these are the AFI, ADI, which can be loans from 50k euros up to 3 million euros. But you also have like some financial help that are dedicated to one sector. For example, ADEM is one of the other public actors. So we've talked about the BPI, but there's also the regions, the ministries, and Europe. And you also have indirect public financing with all the tax returns and financial, tax exemptions. And then once you've done all these steps and you actually want to launch your commercial development and you do some fundraising in equity, there's also loans that are dedicated to commercial expenses. But what will they look at to determine if you're eligible to the BFT, to a loan, to a grant? First one is, and it's very important, the foundation day, and the headquarters location, because if you're inside Paris, if you're outside Paris, within Île-de-France, it's not going to be exactly the same mechanisms. And if you are in Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, it's not going to be exactly the same regional help you can find as a Bretagne. And the age of your company is also really important, because as we've seen before, some of the mechanisms are dedicated for companies less than a year, for more than a year, more than 3 years. So you really have to know those mechanisms, not to miss them because you just celebrated your first anniversary or something like that. Second one is going to be the eligibility. The first one is almost always verified, but you have to be a small or medium enterprise. It's only if another company is a shareholder of your company Be careful if it's more of 20% because BPI will consolidate the accounts between the subsidy and the mother company. Then, according to the different mechanisms, if it's a BFT, if it's a prêt d'amorçage, if it's a TP-up, it's not going to be the same expenses that's going to be eligible for the financing. So, and another point that is very important is that all the expenses you want to be financed with a public actor, you have to do them before you apply to the help. Then it's another thing that we're gonna look at. It's the innovative nature, but as I said before, it's R&D, but not only like deep tech or AI based technologies. It's really broader than that. Now you have like the social innovation, the green innovation, even the creative innovation with the cultural and cultural industry, sorry. So it's really getting broader and broader, and it can be like incremental or it can be like a radical innovation, but you just have to demonstrate that you're actually doing something new. There's an example we like to take because it's companies we've seen at Eldorado, is that you can do like some innovative pet food, but you can also do like some innovative satellites that are going to be launched. One of the most important requirements you need to check before reaching out for the BPI or the region is going to be the level of fonds propres. Fonds propres is the shareholders' equity, because this is going to be the maximum level of intervention of a public actor. Usually we hear about the 1-for-1 or 1-for-2. That means if you have if you want to get 30K of financing, they expect you to have like 30K of shareholders equity, because they always like intervene in co-financing logic to actually share the risk between you and the BPI. But what exactly are the shareholders equity? So it's the capital stock. And sometimes we see companies with a capital stock of €1 or 100 euros. We don't advise you to have like such a low level. Usually a minimum of €1,000 will be expected from the BPI or the region, because it's the level of engagement of you and your associates at the beginning of the company. And then it's going to be like the return earnings and also the results of your years and the last years. So how exactly can you maximize them when you just created your company? So the first is to, as I said, like provide with a substantial initial capital stock, is to do prêt d'honneur, so the loans that are actually given to you as an associate, and then you have to inject the money back into the company to make it go as current accounts. Another solution is to do fundraising. So it's not necessarily starting by doing a 300K euros fundraising. And actually fundraising is not always the best option, but to be eligible to a first mechanism like the BFT, it can be interesting to get a first fundraising with friends and families of more or less 50K, 30K, just to get this first level of shareholder equity. And last but not least, as we said before, if you end up to be a beneficiary, it will increase your level of fonds propres. I'm gonna go really fast on these slides because I think everybody has already heard of COVID a bit too much, but just to say that the French government really helped French companies, whether it is with the PGE, with like tax deductions of deferral payments, but also with investments with the French Tech Bridge. up. This is what I said before, and just to get it more clearer, sorry. Subventions are money given to the company, but in order to prevent you from, I don't know, going on holidays with the money, they will do it in two payments. The first one is when the agreement is given by the BPI. So you usually get between 50 and 70% of the grants. And then when you ask for this financial help, you have to present an innovation program between, I don't know, 6, 12, 24 months. And at the end of this period, you have to come back to the BPI and actually prove that you completed your innovation program in terms of technical developments, but also in terms of expenses. And that's when they give you the second payment of the 50 or 30% of the help missing. We also have like some important advices on this public part, is that the most important financing is not the public fund you're gonna get. It's really your clients, it's your turnover, and those helps are actually a means, but not the end for your company. You really should be focusing on your clients, because as you've seen, there's a lot of public funding, and it can be a bit time consuming if you try to get them all, if you don't know where to start. And that's specifically why also Eldorado, we exist, is to help companies, whether it's really the first financial help they need with a BFT or InnovUp, which are often like 30K grants, and we can like move up the ladder up to the biggest contest of innovation, like INNOV, which we won with Cybids, and it's a bit specific because once you reach this maturity level with a company, you don't usually get grants. And here, as you can see, they got 75% of grants. That's about it for the public part. Before I let Titouan present the equity part, if you have any question, feel free.
Yeah, I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
As per my research that I've done on public funding, grants, BPI loans, etc., and also in your slides, everywhere I see a lot of aids for tech companies and SaaS companies. Since I'm working in fashion, for me, it's very difficult to find any grant. Can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, you should check a financing plan that BPI launched a year or two. It's called Le Plan Touch. So it's dedicated to finance companies that evolves in the creative industry. So they include like gaming, cinema, but also fashion. So I don't know if you have like specifically what I said before, some creative innovation in terms of, I don't know, marketing, in terms of design. Those are some of the expenses you could try to finance with the BPI.
Okay. And also, when you say about grants for cultural companies, is fashion considered culture or not?
Yeah, exactly. We'll send you after the presentation some content on this plan actually.
Okay.
It's in French. We didn't have time to translate it yet, but you really should check the article.
Okay. And just one last question before proceeding. Yeah. You just mentioned that when we are approaching BPI or public sources, we should have at least around 1,000 euros of own shareholders' equity. So in these 1,000 euros, can we have like expenses we have already paid on old stock or apport en industrie?
It depends, but I'd rather say no, because they are going to look at the two things. One is the shareholder equity level, which is like a picture at this time of your company. but also they're gonna look at your cash level on your bank account. And so if you present, I don't know, like 60,000 K of expenses, and you don't have any money in your account, it's gonna be hard for them to understand how they're gonna share the risk.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Also, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So it's about let's say a hack. Maybe you can tell us if it works or not. If I borrow some money from some friends, for example, and put it in my bank account. So, for example, I borrowed 10,000 euros, and I will apply to the BPI. So does it work like that? So do they just need to have some money in my account, or do I need to have it at my expenses for a certain period of time?
Well, it's really two different things, because they're gonna check your level of shareholders' equity, and this is, if it's a loan, it's not gonna be included in it, and they're also gonna check the cash flow level of the company. So this, if you have a loan, will actually help you. But what will really be the maximum level of intervention is really the shareholders' equity.
Okay, thanks.
Are we good on the public part? Okay, so now we're going to discuss about the private financing means, and more specifically the fundraising. So just to start, like you can see, fundraising is a cycle, and it's important to keep that in mind, because at each steps of your startup, you'll find different investors. So as you can see at the beginning of the project, you raise little of capital, and it will be like what we call the 3F, friend, family, and fools, because the startup is at its beginning. Usually it's a small ticket just to make the first developments. Once you have like the product, or at least the idea is very clear, your market is clear, also the problematic, the solution, at this moment you can go and see business angels. Usually they'll put 20 to 500K euros, and after that it's what we call seed stage. Usually you'll find two types of categories. Some talk about pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, and you can go on as long as you want. And usually they say like pre-seed is between 0 and 250K euros, and they'll associate an amount of money with a seed stage. For us, it doesn't mean like anything. I don't think it's the best way to reason on this topic. At each deal stage correspond a maturity stage for your startup. Generally, we'll talk about pre-seed when your startup doesn't have nor the product nor the ideas clear. Seed is you have the product, you have just very little traction or users or customers or whatever, but you already have a product. It's more than an idea, it's now working. Once you move on to Series A, you have the idea, you have the customer, you have traction, you have a strong traction. Usually at this point, you need money to do the marketing, acquire more customer, and maybe scale at international level. It really depends. And Series B is for massive internationalization, and Series C to take the monopoly on the market. So just to remind, Raphael said it before, and I think it's important to insist. Fundraising is a cycle. When you start to raise fund at the beginning, it's not a never-ending race, but it's a long race where you have to raise fund like each 1 to 2 years to scale until you exit. So maybe if your startup isn't like fully defined yet, or it's also the beginning, maybe you can ask yourself, do I really want to raise fund? Is there another mean to finance my my growth? Does it organically with just customers and the revenue it generates? It will take maybe a little bit more time, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, venture capital is very particular industry. Many business fail to raise fund, and even those who raise fund fail afterward. So just to keep that in mind, we'll study after that, like who to ask for funds, and at which stage. Just a few words on the French ecosystem on the venture capital side. 2021 was a record year at all points. First of all, like 11.7 billion were raised in, so it's almost the double of what was raised into 2020. So investors are pretty confident that the startup will succeed. Just you can see on this graph, the amount of money raised is going higher and higher, but you can see that the number of deal is pretty much the same. The average seems to be like around 1,000. So you also have to keep that in mind, that there is more money in the ecosystem, but the numbers of deals signed stays pretty much the same. So when you're going to raise fund, it's like a competition to be part of this 1,000 startup of the French ecosystem. So also just to keep in mind, but on a more positive note, in 2021, so as you can see, 12 unicorns were minted with records high valuation, like for Solar, Ledger, and more recently in 2022, we also had 5 new startups minted, all in January, I think, with as you can see, Payfit, Encore Store. So yeah, the I don't know, the confidence of the investors is still pretty high. Valuation are also going higher, so there are more and more investors of all types, like VCs or business angel, that are now going into seed to get cheaper deal. So even if you're a young startup, now access to capital is easier, even though if the seed and pre-seed round in proportion are decreasing, but it's also a good thing. That means like the 85% that were in seed in the last years, in 2017, grew up and were successful. So it's also a good indicator that the funds that were investing in the ecosystem in 2, 5, 10 years are going to pay off. And investors are eager to invest if they know it will pay off in the long term. So you can see we have a few data. I don't think it's the average deal size increase also, but what you can understand from this, it's French ecosystem is now maturing. It's attracting not only French VCs or investor in general, but you also have like American, English, German investors coming, and even from Eastern Europe, investors are coming because the quality of startups minted in France is pretty high. Now to get a little bit more in the concrete topic, startup that are raising funds are not made equal. You have some sectors, some industries that are more promising for our investors, and there will be more likely to invest in it. We've put a few examples like health tech, cybersecurity, education are easier to finance now than I don't know, a digital native vertical brand, or all the industry on the hardware part, like exotech. That's why you only have one unicorn on the only focus on industry. What can I say more? Yeah, there is also a big shift where we're noticing on the investor side that they're now all of them at seed or Series A, Series B, focusing on the social and environmental impact. So if you have like one of these sectors, or if you have an impact of some kind, it can be nice in your deck to highlight it, because it will be an advantage for you. I mean, it can be a reason for them to follow up with you and invest in your project. But again, it doesn't mean like if you're not in one of the industry, you're not going to raise fund. It will be a little bit more complicated, I think, or yeah, it will be maybe a little bit more complicated, and you'll have to go on and talk with more specific actors, but it's not impossible to raise fund. Even though we've saw a shift on the impact thing, the fundamental for investor didn't change in the past years. They still want to make some ROI on the long term, so 5 to 10 years. So they want you to have a clear vision on the long term of where you're going. But also an important part is not like where are we going, but why is it important to go now? So the why now, the go-to-market strategy is very important, and you have to explain it to investors like on the micro part. Why is this sector booming, but also the macro trend that makes this industry or this project, this problematic, important. Also, here it's more on the early stages startup, but I think it's the case of almost everybody around the table. At early stage, investors are looking in first place for human intelligence, but also like empathy, humility, agility, because in the VC industry, a joke is there are 3 criteria to invest. It's the team, and the team. And in the team, like, who are you? Which are your co-founder? Are your skills complementary? So you'll have to show all that. Like if you build your startup through COVID, how were you resilient, and how maybe you shift your business model to survive? And it's also important to demonstrate how you keep your teams motivated around you, because I mean, you can have a great idea, be humble, but if you're alone, you won't get far. So now we were until this point we were referring at investors, but there are different type, as I said in the beginning, of investor. For example, you have in first place business angels. Usually it's former entrepreneur that have cash out, have now time and money to spend, and they still want to live their entrepreneurial dream, but don't want to start up again. Maybe they want to mentor a little bit. They're more than the business part, they're also looking for a person that they fit with. The VC are not on the same idea of investing. They're here really for the ROI, making a multiple and cash out in 10 years is the time horizon. Sometimes they're focused on specific thesis. We'll see it later, but it's important to understand which fund does what and invest in what. We were talking about a fashion startup. I think it was Anwar. For example, at BPI, you have 24 VC funds that are different. One invest in fashion. If you don't know which one to contact, you can lose a lot of time contacting the 24, not getting answer, then sending another follow-up email, not getting the response, try to send a message on LinkedIn. So it can waste your time. So very important to know what funds invest in what. Same for business angel, must say. And also same for corporate venture. Here it's almost like VCs, but it's not the cash multiple that attract them. It's usually huge corporates that have venture capital activity that helps their core businesses. For example, the CVC of BNP Paribas, which is a bank, will look in fintech that can improve their internal processes, or KYC that can also improve on this part. Veolia has a VC, a corporate VC that will maybe more look in the, I don't know, all that is recycling industry, or maybe just innovation in energy. So you can go and see the corporate venture. You just have to keep in mind that VC wants you to scale. Corporate VC are more in the optic of building with you something more than scale rapidly. And last but not least, you have the family office. Family offices are generally like really rich person or families that structure their activities within like family office. For example, Aglaé Ventures is Bernard Arnault, the CEO of LVMH family office. Financière Saint James is the Benamou family. This type of investor don't usually do full venture capital. They make venture deals on the side. But what is interesting is if you look at the founder of the family office, if he does something related to your activity, he might finance your startup. So for example, if you have a fashion startup, or I don't know, wine or champagne startup, you can go and see Aglaé Venture. For example, Aglaé Venture recently funded an NFT startup really focused on the art part, because Bernard Arnault really loves all the art luxury goods. So we were talking a little bit about it, but each investor has its motivation, and you also want to keep this in mind, because when you have investors, you give them equity, you give them shares in your business, and so they will have a word to say in the decision you take. So for example, business angels are, well, they don't have a real, they have all kinds of motivations, really depends on the person. Usually I was saying it's more a personal fit. They like your idea, they like you, and they want to help you. Whether they have a strong expertise in your domain or a strong network that can help you, they really want to do it. And it's not about the money they give you, it's all about the money plus other things that can bring. But you want to look closely because yeah, because they'll work closely with you. VC are more on the ROI part. They can bring also expertise, network, but they will be less present, but they can invest more. In corporate VCs, it's more strategic investment, I was saying, and they're looking to build with you something that can help them, but also help others, but not their rival if they can. I think we're a little bit, yeah, I'll go quick on the, so crowdfunding is also, I'll pass quickly on this one, but basically on the crowdfunding, you can find all that we said. There is the crowdfunding part, which is only the people donate to you. Crowd equity is like the business angel part, but with really small business angels. So they'll have a dedicated holding to gather all the money. And crowd lending is when you don't want to see a bank, you can go and the crowds lend to you. Just a quick word on that one. It's just a reminder that on 200 tech companies in France that raised, only 3 of them make it to Series C. So I was saying it's a race to get the next funding round, but it's the race that many and even the majorities of startup lose. And I think it's important to keep in mind that it's not that important if you don't raise as much money as you wanted, or if you fail your fundraising. Someone will always do better, someone will always do worse, and the success of your startup isn't measured by the funds you raise, it's by the contentment you give to your customer, your clients, if they're happy, or are you helping them. I think it's more about your purpose than raising money. And yeah, to end up raising funds, you have also to keep that in mind. It's not that simple. It takes times. Very few startups raise in two weeks. Usually it's more like 4 to 8 month period where you have to first prepare your business plan, pitch deck, all the questions that you'll have to ask. After that, and this is where Eldorado and the venture side can help you, you have to screen the investors to not lose time to discuss with people that are not interested. So screen the BA, the VCs that fits with your startup. And trust me, it can be really complicated. And after that, you have the roadshow due diligence that can also take a lot of time because you have to give documents, explanation. It's back-to-back meetings, generally at least 1 month. And after that, you'll have the letter of intent if you succeed, the term sheet, and at this point, it's not even finished, the shareholder agreement and the legal procedures at the end. So yeah, the raising funds is tough, and maybe if you can avoid it, it might be better. So yeah, I think that's it. It's usually the last slide that we present. Does anyone has any question